The phone call came on a Tuesday, which I remember because Tuesdays are my yoga mornings, and I had just gotten home, still in my leggings, still holding my water bottle, when my son called and said the 6 words that changed everything between us. "Mom, we need to talk finances." I sat down on the bench by the front door, still in my shoes. That should have told me something right there, that I didn't even take my shoes off first, the way I always do. My body knew before my brain did. "Of course," I said. "When?" "Saturday. Come for dinner. Gwen's making her pot roast. I said I'd be there." I stood up, put my water bottle on the kitchen counter, and stood there for a long moment looking out the window at my backyard. The hydrangeas I'd planted the spring after my husband passed were just starting to come in. Blue ones. Harold had loved blue hydrangeas. I'd planted them because I needed something to take care of, something that would come back every year whether I tended it or not. I was 63 years old. I had worked for 31 years as a hospital administrator in Charlotte, North Carolina. I had raised one son, mostly on my own after Harold got sick, and I had watched him grow into a man I was genuinely proud of. A civil engineer with a good mind, a good heart, and, as it turned out, a spending problem neither of us had ever named out loud. His name is Wyatt. No, I'm sorry. That's not right. My son's name is Fletcher. I've called him Fletch since he was small enough to carry on my hip. Gwen is his wife. They've been married 6 years. She's a project manager at a tech firm, remote work. Very capable woman. I have always tried to like Gwen. Some days I succeed more than others. They have one child together, a little boy, 2.5 years old, named Jasper. He has Fletcher's ears and Gwen's eyes, and he has absolutely no idea what is about to happen to his grandmother. I drove to their house Saturday evening with a bottle of Cabernet and a container of my butterscotch brownies, because I am the kind of woman who brings something, even when I suspect I'm walking into an ambush. Their house is in a suburb called Waverly Park. Good neighborhood, good school district, big homes with 3-car garages and matching mailboxes. Fletcher and Gwen moved there 4 years ago, when Gwen got her promotion and Fletcher landed a long-term contract with a municipal infrastructure firm. Together, they were making somewhere north of $310,000 a year. I know that number because Fletcher told me, proudly, at Thanksgiving 2 years ago. He'd said it the way men say things they want you to hold on to. Leaning back slightly, chin up, the way Harold used to announce good news. I was happy for them. I am still happy for them, in the way that you can be happy for someone and also furious with them at the same time. I parked in the driveway behind Gwen's SUV, a white one, new, I didn't recognize the model, and sat in my car for a moment the way I always do before difficult things. Harold used to tease me about that. He'd say, "Lorraine, are you praying in there or just stalling?" And I'd say, "Both, Harold, both." The front door opened before I even reached the porch. Gwen was standing there in a linen blouse and jeans, holding Jasper on her hip. She smiled the smile she gives me, which is warm in the way a hotel lobby is warm, pleasant and deliberate and not quite personal. "So good you could make it," she said. Jasper reached for me immediately, and I took him, and that, holding my grandson, was the realest thing that happened in the first hour of that evening. Dinner was pot roast, which was good, I'll give her that. Red potatoes, green beans, a salad. They had a bottle of wine already open on the table, a Pinot Noir, and Fletcher poured generously, which I noticed. We talked about normal things for the first 40 minutes. Jasper's new words. A project Fletcher was bidding on downtown. A vacation they were considering, somewhere out west, maybe Utah, maybe Colorado. I listened and ate and waited. Fletcher cleared the plates. Gwen took Jasper upstairs for his bath. When she came back down, she sat next to Fletcher across from me, and I watched them exchange the small look that married people give each other when they have agreed in advance on something. I folded my hands on the table. "Okay," I said. "Tell me." Fletcher looked at his wine glass first. He has always done that. Looked at something other than my face when he's about to say something he doesn't feel entirely good about. I'd seen that same look when he was 9 years old and had broken a neighbor's window with a baseball, and again at 17 when he dented my car and waited 3 days to tell me. "Mom," he said, "we're in a little bit of a tight spot." I did not say anything. I have learned, over 63 years, that silence is one of the most useful tools a woman can carry. The ARM on the house is resetting in September, he said. The rate's going from 4.2 to almost 7. Our payment's going up about $1,900 a month. I did the math quietly. That was nearly $23,000 a year in additional mortgage payments. We've looked at refinancing, Gwen said. She had a calm, measured voice. She always does. But with the current rate environment, we'd need a cosigner with stable income and strong credit to get approved at a reasonable rate. There it was. And you're thinking of me, I said. You have excellent credit, Fletcher said. Your income is consistent. And Mom, we're not asking you to pay anything. We just need your name on the paperwork so we can get the refinance through. That's it. I looked at my son. I looked at his wife. I looked at the table between us, which had a small centerpiece of fresh flowers, peonies, which Gwen has on the table when she wants things to feel intentional. That's it, I repeated. That's it, Fletcher said. I nodded slowly. And what's the other part? Fletcher blinked. What do you mean? Fletcher, I said, you called this a finances conversation. You said we need to talk. The ARM resetting is one thing. What's the other thing? Gwen looked at her hands. Fletcher looked at his wine. Daycare, he said finally. I waited. Jasper's been at Little Sprouts on Henderson since he was 4 months old. Full-time infant care was $2,200 a month. Now that he's a toddler, it's $1,800, which isn't terrible, but he stopped. It's a lot. With everything else, I said. With the mortgage reset coming. And we just put both cars on payment plans this year because… Both cars, I said. The lease on my truck ran out and I had to buy something, and Gwen's old Civic wasn't reliable anymore with Jasper, so I held up one hand gently. Not to stop him, just to slow him down. What is it you're asking me, Fletch? He looked at me then. Really looked at me, the way he does when he needs me to already know the answer so he doesn't have to say it. You've been talking about slowing down, he said. You mentioned last Christmas that you were thinking about retiring in the next couple of years. I said I might think about it, I said. I said it the way you say things at Christmas. But you have your pension, he said, and Dad's life insurance and your savings. You wouldn't need your salary to… To what? I said. To live comfortably. You've said that yourself. I looked at him. You want me to retire so I can watch Jasper. The word retire hung in the air between us like something that had been dropped and hadn't hit the floor yet. Not full-time, Gwen said quickly. We're not asking for full-time, just 4 days a week. We both have Fridays flexible, so one of us could take Fridays. 4 days a week, I said. And we'd cover your gas, obviously, Fletcher said. You'd have to drive over here in the mornings, but we'd gas, I said. You'd cover my gas. Fletcher heard it in my voice then. He sat back slightly. Mom, I'm 63 years old, I said. I manage a 30-bed inpatient unit at Mercy General. I have worked in hospital administration for 31 years. You want me to give up my career, my benefits, my professional identity, to do childcare 4 days a week, and you're offering to reimburse my gas money. When you say it like that… Gwen started. How else would I say it? I said, and I said it quietly. I want to be clear about that. I said it very quietly. Nobody spoke for a moment. Then something occurred to me. Something I should have asked 10 minutes earlier. Does Gwen's mother know you're having this conversation with me? I said. Gwen straightened almost imperceptibly. What do you mean? Your mother lives 20 minutes from here. You've mentioned she's semi-retired. Has she been helping with Jasper at all? My mom has a lot going on, Gwen said. She does water aerobics 3 mornings a week and she's in a book club and… So does she watch Jasper? Or doesn't she? Silence. Sometimes, Gwen said. How often? Once a week, maybe. On Wednesdays. I nodded. And you pay her for that? Fletcher looked at Gwen. Gwen looked at her wine glass. She's family, Gwen said. I'm family too, I said. Mom, Fletcher said. Does she accept payment, Gwen? For watching Jasper on Wednesdays? What happened next was one of the most telling 10 seconds of my adult life. Gwen's jaw moved slightly, the way people's jaws move when they are deciding exactly how much of a true thing they are willing to say. She accepts a little something, Gwen said, to help with her expenses. How much is a little something? Mom. Fletcher said, with a warning note in his voice. How much? I said. $1,200 a month, Gwen said, very quietly, almost below audible. I let that sit there. $1,200 a month for 1 day a week of childcare. From Gwen's mother. And Fletcher had not volunteered this information when he called me on Tuesday. He had not mentioned it at dinner. He had been prepared to ask me to retire, co-sign a mortgage, and provide 4 days of unpaid childcare, while his wife was paying her own mother $1,200 a month to show up on Wednesdays. I didn't say anything right away. I reached down for my purse. Fletcher's expression changed. Mom, what are? I need a minute, I said. I went to the powder room off the hallway. I turned the water on so they couldn't hear me through the door. I stood in front of the mirror and looked at myself for a long time. I thought about the summer Fletcher was born. Harold was still healthy then, and we were broke in the way that young families are broke. Not desperate, just tight. I worked part-time at a pediatric clinic while Fletcher slept in a pack-and-play behind the reception desk. My mother-in-law, God rest her, drove 40 minutes every Tuesday and Thursday to sit with him so I could work more hours. She never once asked for gas money. I never once thought to offer her $1,200 a month. I thought about the year Harold got his diagnosis. Fletcher was 14. I worked full-time through all of it because we needed the insurance. I sat in hospital rooms at night and drove to work in the mornings, and I did not call my son 15 years later and suggest he rearrange his life to compensate me for any of it. I looked at myself in that mirror. 63 years old. Good posture still. Gray hair I had stopped fighting a few years ago. Harold's engagement ring on my right hand now. I turned off the water. I went back to the dining room table, sat down, opened my purse, and took out the small notebook I carry everywhere. I had not planned to do this, or maybe some part of me had, the part that had been quietly doing arithmetic since Tuesday. I want to show you both something, I said. I opened the notebook to a page I had written that morning, sitting at my kitchen table with my coffee. Before yoga, before the day had had a chance to mean anything yet. I had written it because I am the kind of woman who writes things down when she needs to think clearly, and I had needed to think very clearly. I turned the notebook so they could both see it. The refinance, I said. That would make me responsible, legally, for a mortgage on a house I don't live in the event that you two default. The current payoff balance, based on what you told me when you bought the place, is somewhere around $340,000. That is what's at stake if I co-sign and something goes wrong. Gwen opened her mouth. I kept going. Childcare, you're currently paying $1,800 a month at Little Sprouts. You're paying Gwen's mother $1,200 a month for 1 day a week. That's $3,000 a month in childcare for 5 days of coverage. You want me to replace 4 of those days for gas money. I looked at them both. The market rate for in-home childcare in this part of Charlotte, I looked it up this morning, is between $18 and $22 an hour. 4 days a week, 8 hours a day, is 32 hours. At $20 an hour, that's $640 a week, about $2,500 a month. Fletcher was very still, which means you're willing to pay Gwen's mother $1,200 a month for 1 day a week, I said, but you expect me to provide 4 days a week at no cost. It's not the same. Gwen started. How is it not the same? I said. And I said it gently. I want to be clear about that too. I was not angry, exactly. Anger is hot. What I felt was something older than anger, something that had been cooling and hardening for a long time, and now it was just solid. Your family, Fletcher said. You're his grandmother. So is she, I said. Nobody answered that. Here's what I want you to understand, I said. I love you, Fletcher. I love Jasper more than I have words for, and I understand that you are in a real financial bind. The arm reset is genuinely difficult, and I'm not dismissing that. But you are earning $310,000 a year between the two of you. That is a real income, a strong income. And the solution to a budget problem that comes from lifestyle choices is not to ask your 63-year-old mother to give up her career. Fletcher looked at the table. You have 2 new cars on payment plans, I said. You're at a house that requires a cosigner to refinance, which means you bought at the top of what you could qualify for. You're paying $1,200 a month to Gwen's mother for 1 day of childcare. These are choices, not emergencies. Costs are up everywhere, Gwen said with an edge now. It's not like we were reckless. I didn't say reckless, I said. I said choices. There's a difference. What are you saying, Mom? Fletcher said. Are you saying no? I closed my notebook. I'm saying a few things, I said. I'm not co-signing the refinance. My name on that paperwork means I'm on the hook for $340,000 in debt on a house that isn't mine, and I'm not willing to do that. That's a clear no. Gwen's chin came up slightly. On the childcare question, I said, I am not retiring early to provide free daycare. I am not doing that. But I am willing to take Jasper 1 day a week, Thursdays, because that's the day that works for my schedule, and I'm not asking you to pay me for it. That's a gift. That's grandmothering. 4 days a week of unpaid labor while you pay someone else for the 5th day is not grandmothering. That's employment without compensation. The room was very quiet. I would also gently suggest, I said, that before you ask anyone else to help solve this problem, you take a hard look at the monthly budget. I'm not telling you how to live. I'm telling you that when someone has a cash flow problem on $310,000 a year, the solution doesn't usually live inside someone else's retirement. Fletcher looked at me for a long time. He looked the way he had looked at 9 years old, standing in front of me with grass-stained jeans, and a confession he didn't want to make, like someone who is embarrassed and sorry, and also just a little bit relieved that the truth is finally out. I didn't know you'd done all this math, he said. Yes, you did, I said. You just hoped I hadn't. He looked down. He didn't argue with that. Gwen said nothing. She was looking at the peonies in the centerpiece, and I couldn't read her face, and I wasn't sure I needed to. I picked up my purse. I stood up. I'm going to go say goodnight to Jasper, I said, and then I'm going to go home. I went upstairs. Jasper was in his crib, almost asleep, his monitor light blinking green in the corner. I stood over him for a moment and watched him breathe, his little chest rising and falling, his small hands curled loose beside his face. He looked like Harold in certain lights, mostly around the eyes. I tucked the edge of his blanket in on the side that had come loose, the way I always do when I'm in a room with something small that needs settling. Then I came back downstairs, got my coat, and walked to the front door. Fletcher was standing in the hallway. He'd followed me, which he almost always does, even when he doesn't know what he wants to say yet. He'd been doing that since he was 4 years old. Mom, he said. I know, I said. I should have told you about Gwen's mom. Yes, I said. You should have. I'm sorry. I looked at my son. He was 38 years old. He had his father's ears in my eyes, and he was, underneath all the poor planning and the wishful thinking, a genuinely good person. I believe that. I have always believed that. I know you're sorry, I said. That doesn't change what I said tonight, but I know you are. I hugged him. I held on for a few seconds longer than usual. Call me this week, I said. Not about money. Just call me. He nodded. I went to my car. I sat in it for a moment in the driveway, the way I always do. The porch light was still on behind me. Somewhere in the upstairs window, Jasper was sleeping. I thought about something Harold said to me once, very early in our marriage, when I was agonizing over a decision I already knew the answer to. He'd said, Lorraine, you already know. You've known for 20 minutes. You're just waiting for it to feel easier. It doesn't always feel easier. Some things you do because they're right, and right doesn't always feel the way you want it to. I put the car in reverse. I had work on Monday, a meeting with the nursing director at 8, a budget review at 10, a staff recognition luncheon at noon. I had 31 years of mornings like that ahead of me, or maybe 2 more years, or maybe 5. But they were mine to count, mine to spend, mine to decide what to do with. Nobody else got to retire me. Not even the people I loved most. I backed out of the driveway and turned toward home, and the porch light got smaller in my rearview mirror, and I let it.